Good day, friends, and a very happy new year to all of you. In today's video, I'll talk about the fallout of Operation Sindoor, which undeniably was the most important event done by India in 2025. The objective of Operation Sindoor was to deter Pakistan from its proxy war into India. Unfortunately, the opposite happened. As a consequence of this operation, Pakistan was not deterred, but India is deterred. And because of that, the initiative has passed on completely into the hands of Pakistan's now powerful Army Chief Field Marshal Asim Munir, who alone will determine the need and scale for proxy war across India and a likely hot war, a war of decision between India and Pakistan. Now, this situation has come about because of four big factors that I want to discuss in some details, but very briefly, these four factors are: number one, that the two adversaries have realized that whenever there is a BJP government in power in India, it simply lacks the political will to fight. The second factor is, now it is well known that President Trump is unhappy with Prime Minister Modi. And what we should expect now is, in any future crisis, clash, conflict, or hot war between India and Pakistan, the Trump administration will support Pakistan fully. It will not support India. And this has implications which I'll discuss. The third factor is, we saw in Operation Sindoor that China supported Pakistan to the hilt with its non kinetic capabilities in what was a one front reinforced war faced by India, and I spoke about this. Now, what we will see is all that will happen and much more. So much that the nature and character of war will change. I'll explain this as I go along in my narrative, and for the first time in the next crisis, we will see the Pakistan military combating at the operational level of war, something that it has not done in any operation or war in previous years with India. In all the wars that the two countries have fought, they both have had same doctrines, and they both have fought at the tactical level, which was about battles, which was about attrition, where the two armies or the land forces, they had a key role to play. It will not be there in the next war, where I will explain how the Pakistan military will fight not at the tactical but at the operational level, at the much higher level of war. Now, and the fourth reason is that despite India having assessed PLA as its main military threat, and the PLA having been on Indian territory in East Ladakh since April 2020, unfortunately, even today, India's senior most military officer, Chief of Defense Staff Anil Chauhan, does not seem to understand the war that the Indian military needs to prepare against. And I will talk all these issues in some details now. Let's start with lack of India's political will. Now, the two adversaries saw in Operation Parakram, which was done by the Vajpayee government. The operation was initiated by the Prime Minister, by the Vajpayee government, but it was not taken to its logical end. And we've seen the same thing during Prime Minister Modi's tenure. There have been many crises between India and Pakistan, between India crisis with Pakistan as well as China. For example, there was this 2016 so-called surgical strike against Pakistan, 2017 Doklam crisis against China, 2019 Balakot attacks against Pakistan, and then we had Operation Sindoor in May 2025. All these operations were initiated by India, but none was taken to its logical conclusion because the political leadership simply did not show the stomach for the fight. And this the adversaries know, and this has obvious implications. Now, let me talk about the second thing that I said, that in case of a crisis or a war between India and Pakistan, the Americans will support Pakistan. Let me start by explaining or looking at the voluminous report written by a distinguished panel of Americans for the US Congress in 2025, where it mentioned the 4 day clash between India and Pakistan in May of 2025. And this was as a consequence of the Pahalgam attack, where 26 civilians were massacred by terrorists. And yet, this report talks about an insurgent attack that happened in Pahalgam. Now, the implication of this is very simple, that Trump administration will not blame Pakistan in any future crisis, whatever it may do. Next, the same report talks of that in the 4 day clash, the Pakistan military had success over Indian military. Well, this is for the first time that the Americans or the Westerners, especially the Americans, they have assessed that Pakistan military is conventionally stronger than the Indian military. Since 1971, this has happened for the first time. Because in the 1971 war, where India created Bangladesh, a new nation, it was well understood that because India has a much larger army than the Pakistan army, its conventional forces are larger, so therefore it is superior to the Pakistan military. So that thinking has been destroyed, it has been shattered as far as the Americans are concerned, and it is written very clearly in this report. Next, the report talks about, and I'm quoting from the report, that China helped Pakistan with live inputs on Indian military positions throughout the crisis. So, this is both acceptance of the fact that the PLA was helping Pakistan with its space capabilities throughout the crisis, and also also a given by the American side that in a future crisis they'll have no problem with the PLA supporting Pakistan with its non-kinetic capabilities. So what we should be looking at is, we know that the PLA in its second set of reforms under President Xi Jinping that happened in April of 2024, it has created two new organizations which are relevant to my discussion, and these two are Aerospace Force, which is about its space capabilities, and Cyberspace Force, which is about its cyber capabilities, as two independent arms which report directly at the highest level, which is the Central Military Commission. So what we will see is that the Aerospace Force, which is an arm, which this will be available to the Pakistan military fully in case of another crisis or a war with India. So what this means is, besides other things, when we talk of the non-kinetic capabilities of this Aerospace Force, surveillance will be available to the Pakistan military round the clock, provided by the Beidou constellation of the Chinese, which is state-of-the-art constellation satellites. Then the accurate missile targeting will be available to the Pakistan side because of the capabilities, aerospace capabilities, which will be provided by China. And then this Aerospace Force has the capability to dislodge, disorient, and disable through out of orbit, through non-kinetic capabilities, India's limited satellites, which will be available or which should be available to the Indian military in war. So the Americans will not have problem with any of this. Now the next is that President Trump will not take on any mediation role between India and Pakistan in a future crisis. It is well known that whenever there has been a problem or a crisis between India and Pakistan, both sides have sought at different timings mediation or help from America to ease tensions between the two. For example, in Operation Parakram, the Bajpayee government sought the help of Americans. The NSA of the time, Brijesh Mishra, had reached out to his American counterpart, Condoleezza Rice, which then helped in ease tensions between India and Pakistan. And there is enough evidence to support that the Trump administration helped the Modi government in bringing a ceasefire between India and Pakistan in Operation Sindoor, but this credit being given to President Trump by the Modi government. Now, when I talk of the evidence is very clear that on 8th of May, which is the day after the air attacks happened, on the night of 6th, 7th May, a press release came from the Indian embassy in Washington that India's NSA Doval had got in touch with his American counterpart Marco Rubio. Now, why do you get in touch? You get in touch because you want help, you want mediation from the Americans. But the Indian side denies this. Then we also know that on 10th of May, it is President Trump who was the first one to put on his social media that India and Pakistan have agreed to a full and immediate ceasefire. It was only later on the day that India's foreign secretary, he said that yes, a ceasefire had been reached between India and Pakistan, but this credit was not given of the ceasefire to President Trump. And just 2 days back, we have seen that Ricky Gill, who is a senior American, he's an official with the National Security Council of America. He's been given an award by his boss, Marco Rubio. And this award is because Ricky Gill has played a role in mediation in bringing about a ceasefire between India and Pakistan. And it is very obvious why the Modi government does not want to give credit to President Trump, because it is felt in India that if this credit is given, it would show the Prime Minister not as a strong leader who can take on the challenge of Pakistan all by himself. Now, there are implications of this. And one of the implications, a big implication, is that the Indian military should not expect the GPS to be available to it in its next crisis or conflict with Pakistan. It may be switched off. Now think of this scenario where the GPS is not available to the Indian military and the PLA aerospace arm is doing its job. A job of dislodging the Indian satellites from their orbits through non-kinetic capabilities. Now, without space capabilities, one can well imagine the accuracy of the Indian missiles, accuracy which was shown in Operation Sindoor. It will not be there in the next crisis. Then, rest be assured that President Trump, who has remained restrained while he has spoken about having brought the ceasefire between the two countries more than 60 times, he has spoken about 7 jets being downed, but he has been restrained in saying which countries' fighter jets were shot down on the night of 6th, 7th May. So expect President Trump in the next crisis to say that also publicly and repeatedly. And here is another thing. Just 2 or 3 days back, a report came that the Americans have agreed to give or will be giving a $686 million military package to Pakistan for the sustenance and upgrade of the F-16s which are there with the Pakistan Air Force. Implication is very simple, that on the one hand, the Americans are helping Pakistan upgrade the F-16s with them, and on the other hand, knowing fully well that the F-16s will be used by the Pakistan Air Force against the Indian military, they seem to have no objection to that at all. So these are some of the implications that I wanted to put on the table, which have happened, which will happen with America as a consequence of Operation Sindoor. Now, let me come to China's support to Pakistan. Just 2 days back, a report came in the Hindu newspaper that Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi, when he was addressing a forum on international situation and China's foreign policy, he spoke about China having a mediatory role in bringing the tensions down between India and Pakistan in 2025. Obviously, the reference was to Operation Sindoor. And I believe Wang Yi in what he has said, because it is well known that after India removed 370 from Jammu and Kashmir, Pakistan has been seeking, amongst other things, advice of the Chinese on all matters pertaining to the India and Indian military. And we also know that Xi Jinping had advised the then Army Chief General Bajwa to focus on development and not so much on security. And we know that the security was being taken care of Xi Jinping. I have done earlier videos, I won't go in the details. So the point that I want to make is that what Wang He said about bringing the tensions down seems to be absolutely a credible statement. Now, the implications why he said that is very obvious. He has finally come out with this statement because a realization seems to be coming in China at the highest level that as long as the Modi government is in power, normalization of relations between the two countries will not be possible. And therefore, in my assessment, the Chinese may not want to leash the Pakistanis so much in the next crisis or conflict with India. And this has implications. Implications because, as the US Congress report rightly pointed out, that today 82% of the military hardware which is there with the Pakistan military is of Chinese origin. And the fact that all the shortcomings of the two sides which were there, the limitations which would have been noticed by both the sides, India and Pakistan, both sides are now quickly filling up their operational gaps for the next challenge. And it is also a reality that the Pakistan side will be able to do that much faster than the Indian side because it is getting the support from China and it has Chinese origin equipment. And this Congress report already talks of about the fifth generation aircraft, 40 of them, J-35, coming to China. It talks about longer range missiles, which is in addition to PL-15, the PL-17 being given to the Pakistan military. Then KJ-500, AWACS will go to the Pakistan military. Then ballistic missile defense platforms like the HQ-19 will be given by China to Pakistan. And I have no doubts at all that anti-drone systems platforms with microwave weapons, with laser weapons will also be given by China to Pakistan. So the point that I am making is that while a report has come that Pakistan has increased its defense budget for 2025-2026 by 20%, this is only one side of the story. Budget aside, money aside, China will make sure that if there is another crisis or if there is a hot war between India and Pakistan, Pakistan will not lose and India will not win. And which is why I said that in the given situation where the Trump administration will not support India, what we will see in the next crisis is that that Chinese will play a bigger role in changing the nature of war between India and Pakistan. Let me briefly explain to those who have not seen my earlier videos that when we talk of nature of war, we are talking about what war is. And any war is about violence, it is about bloodshed. Since war started, mankind started wars, it has always been about these things, and therefore, it was rightly said that the nature of war never changes. But the character of war means how a war will be fought. It kept constantly changing because it was about new technologies getting inducted, and because of that, new war concepts being formed. So that changed constantly every time a new technology came in. So the point to make here is that because of two big organizations which have been created, as I said, as a consequence of the April 2024 reforms within the PLA, and these two organizations I'm only talking of because they are relevant to my discussion. They are Aerospace Force and Cyberspace Force. These are the non-kinetic capabilities where we will see the PLA playing a bigger role. In Operation Sindoor, we saw that the Pakistan side demonstrated its cyber capabilities in a limited way in Jammu and Kashmir theater, where reports came that for weeks, the government computers of the Jammu and Kashmir administration, they were shut down because of cyber attacks. See, cyber attacks are non-attributable. You cannot say it came from which country, because it can be done from anywhere by any country. So the point to make here is that the PLA has enough cyber reconnaissance data on India, and it has today the capability, because of these two organizations that I just spoke about, to dislodge our satellites and to do cyber campaign within whole of India, which is called the war zone. In other words, bring the civilian life in India to a complete standstill. They have that capability. And if they were to do that in the next crisis, because they will make sure that Pakistan wins, then this will also be, as far as the world is concerned, the first cyber campaign done by any country. And for China, it will have a first user advantage in cyber over its key adversary, which is the American military. Now, as far as character of war is concerned, that will also change, because as I said, the Pakistan military today has the capabilities to fight at the operational level of war. An operational level of war, what it means is that you fight in depth, that you hit in depth on the land battlefield. When you hit in depth, that means the follow-on forces of the enemy, they cannot come and join with with the front line, and therefore the defenses of the enemy, they unravel. Now this capability they have because of various organizations which now are there. For example, we saw that the Pakistan Air Force, it showed itself in Operation Sindoor the capability to fight at the operational level with a new concept called multi-domain operation, where it could fire visual range missiles using a digital ecosystem. So we saw that capability, the world saw it. Then, after that, immediately after Operation Sindoor, the Pakistani army has created under it a rocket force command, where all the conventional capabilities, missiles, the conventional missiles that the Pakistan military has or is likely to get from the PLA, and here I include the hypersonic cruise missiles that the PLA is likely to give to the Pakistan military, which will be a game changer. They will all come under the Rocket Force Command, and this will also be operating at the operational level of war, which means hitting at the depth of the Indian space, battle space. Next, as I said, these two organizations which have been created by the PLA, which is the Aerospace Force and the Cyberspace Force, they also operate at the operational and the strategic level as well. But specific to the operational level, we are talking now of the combat zone and not the war zone. So here they will also have a role to play. And plus, of course, we saw that the Pakistan Air Force already has good electronic warfare capabilities. So the point that I am making is that India does not have these capabilities, and especially the capabilities in cyber, in electronic warfare, and in space. And this is where the war is won or lost. And I've explained this in my earlier videos. So the Pakistan military will have this huge advantage. And another big advantage that the Pakistan military will have is, in addition to the operational level of war, fighting there, at the strategic level of war, which is the highest level of war, it will be able to make decisions of war and peace much faster than the Indian military. Because what the Pakistani side has done is, as a consequence of their 27th constitutional amendment, not only given a lifetime constitutional immunity to Asim Munir, it has also brought all the conventional and the missile and the nuclear capabilities of Pakistan under its powerful army chief, who is today 5-star. He's a field marshal, and he's also the chief of defense forces, which means he commands all the three services, the physical services of the Pakistan military. Not only that, other reforms also have come in, changes have come in, where the post of the chairman, Joint Chiefs of Staff Committee has been abolished. The National Command Authority has been diluted insofar as the political leadership is concerned. A new organization called National Strategic Command, which will have under it the Strategic Plans Division, which is about the nuclear weapons of Pakistan, this all will be under the powerful Pakistan Army Chief. So, the point to make here is that this single man will determine, certainly in consultation with Chinese, issues of war and peace with India. So, the decision making will be faster as far as the Pakistan military is concerned at the strategic level, and at the operational level. I have already explained that how they have the capabilities to fight there, and that is where the war ends. So all this talk of huge manpower, army being in the lead as far as India is concerned, this needs a serious review. India needs to cut its manpower drastically if it wants to prepare for war with Pakistan, because the Chinese will not fight with India. But this is a subject I'll just come to in a while. And the last point that I want to make here is that in addition to all that, to achieve its objectives set by the Pakistan and the Chinese side of this one front integrated war, what they will need is, the Pakistan side will need is capabilities to meet the surge requirement. That means unlimited ammunition, unlimited war withdrawal, spare parts to support intense salvos throughout the campaign. So this advantage the Pakistan side will have and not the Indian side, because we know since 2022, as far as the Pakistanis are concerned, their military representative, they have been embedded. Additional people are there in the Pakistan embassy in China, whose sole job is to ensure that the war with all supplies, unlimited supply, that flow is maintained from China to Pakistan. So we have to keep all these things in mind, and this is why I say that India is deterred. Now, I come to my last point, which sadly is that the Indian military leadership still does not understand the war it needs to prepare for. Now, recently we had Chief of Defense Staff Anil Chauhan on the 23rd of December. He gave a talk at IIT Bombay where he made 4 points. As far as war is concerned, he said that India needs to be prepared for two kinds of war. One, he said, short duration, high intensity conflict to deter terrorism. What India did in Operation Sindoor. Well, it will not happen like this. Because what happened in Operation Sindoor was a one front reinforced war, which I have just explained will get further reinforced by the capabilities of the PLA. The PLA need not fight with India. So, when these capabilities are there and the other side has more capabilities, then the other side, depending on what their war objectives are, will determine the duration and the intensity of war. So, for Anil Chauhan to say that it will be a short duration, high intensity war, something like Operation Sindoor, it will not happen. Because the days of Operation Sindoor and projection of military power are over. The next step will be a hot war, God forbid, if it happens between India and Pakistan. It will not be Operation Sindoor 2. The next point that he makes is that India also needs to prepare for a land centric, long duration conflict with neighbors with which it has territorial dispute. Now, here he is talking about the two front war. Now, this is an illusion, especially after Operation Sindoor, that actually Pakistan, the two fronts, India, and I don't have to go in the details. They've already said so many times how they will fight the two front war, where they believe that the Chinese and the Pakistanis, they are with similar war capabilities. So nothing of that will happen. Because what will happen, I have already explained, is that China has no intentions at all to fight a war with India, and instead, the objective, it will support Pakistan. I have said repeatedly, and that is where the fight will happen. Now, next, Anil Chauhan spoke about the new domains and the asymmetrical role that they'll play. He spoke about cyber, electromagnetic spectrum, space, and he spoke about cognitive domain. The first thing that I want to say is that cognitive is not a domain of war, it is a war by itself. When we say cognitive domain, we are talking of it as a domain of war. And what he seems to be saying is that, you see, cognitive is a mind game where physically mentally you exhaust the enemy. That means you do narrative building. So it is not a domain of war, it is a war by itself. A war by itself which can only be based on reality. For example, in the PLA, what they have is a specialized organization called the Political Works Department, which works directly under the Central Military Commission and whose sole job, is what they call propaganda, which is about narrative building. But you can only build a narrative when something actually has happened first on ground, as we saw in case of Operation Sindoor. In Operation Sindoor, it is usually said that in narrative building, the Pakistanis scored over India. Well, the reality is that on 8th of May, what the Pakistani side did was they gave a fulsome briefing to the international media on the air attacks that happened between the two countries, the two air forces. And the Indian side has still not spoken about those air attacks. So, unless something is there and you show something, then you build the narrative on that. So, the point to make here is that Anil Chauhan needs to understand this is a war by itself, and the Chinese call it information war. So, what the Chinese are fighting today is a informatized war, an intelligence-sized war, which is kinetic, and as well as they have the non-kinetic, which is the information war, which is done by the public political work department. Now I come to my last point made by Anil Chauhan, where he spoke about nuclear deterrence, and he said that with both our adversaries, India and China, it should not get breached. So we should maintain nuclear deterrence. Well, you see, the point is that nobody is fighting a nuclear war. So, what India needs is the capabilities first to fight a conventional war against Pakistan. Forget China. You first make those capabilities which do not exist today. For example, while he speaks about cyber, electromagnetic spectrum, and space, India does not have these capabilities, or they are simply minuscule. I don't want to go in the details here. So, they need to be built up. So the point that I am making is the war has to be understood very correctly, and it has to be understood very clearly that India cannot do another Operation Sindoor or think of doing another Operation Sindoor with Pakistan, because it will lead to a hot war, and I've already explained the consequences of that hot war. And my bottom line for those who actually think that India's nuclear capabilities can scare China or Pakistan, let them know that China today has the capability to locate, diffuse, disarm, disable India's nuclear weapons even before they are assembled. So the focus has to be on the conventional capabilities. Should be the priority. Thank you so much.